Okay, I'm back with another banned book. Um, this is one of the most challenged books in the U.S. in the last decade, and so I read it because, and I know I've mentioned this on a couple of my other um, videos, but I'm trying to really get to read a lot of like middle grade books or children's books because most of the classics I just have read at some point or, made a point to read them if I didn't have to read them. And then in YA, I was always, pretty, pretty actively reading YA until more recently. So a lot of the YA and a lot of the adult stuff and the classics I've read. So what I haven't read is often the middle grade in the kids' books, and part of the so-called rationale behind book bans and book challenges is that we're protecting kids, So I think this is where the bigger issue is like, okay, the books that could be controversial for kids under a certain age, who maybe don't have sort of the development, haven't reached a certain level of development to make, their own decisions. And so, by the time you get into like adolescence and you're reading, I mean, if you can read at that level, you probably can handle the content, that's just sort of, but, a lot of these have pictures. And so that was kind of my thought process. And so far, I have not found anything remotely upsetting in any of these books. But as I've said in other videos, I do wonder, this is kind of a challenging challenge for me because I'm just very strongly opposed to banning books. And, I try to be open-minded and think like, okay, why could I see the rationale? But I haven't seen anything yet that makes any sense to me at all. So, this one makes the least sense to me of anything I've seen. Because, I understand, I personally, don't understand people being, concerned about talk of racism or dealing with, transgender issues or LGBTQ issues. But at least I can say, okay, I know that there are people who are, who have issues with those things. So this one that's super challenged is The Adventures of Captain Underpants. And I have no idea why anyone would be offended by this. Supposedly the language is vulgar. I think the worst thing they say is mean or jerk or something. Like, there's no swearing that I'm aware of. So I'm not 100% sure what that's about. I don't even think they say damn. And, I mean, it's written for what, like 6-year-olds? So it shouldn't be too offensive, I would think. But I will say, this was actually very, very funny, and it was very delightful, and I could see, I think this would be so appealing to, not just boys, but obviously, especially boys, and it can be hard to get boys into reading, just because there's still certain, like, gender attitudes. Boys aren't supposed to sit quietly and read, and, like, it's a lot of nonsense. But, and so as a result, by the time they get into school, there's often, it's harder to get boys to read and male students to engage with books. So anything, I think, that encourages reading is good. But I could definitely see this being very, very appealing. Like I said, for boys, I thought it was hilarious, and I am well outside of the target audience for this, and I thought it was hilarious now, and I would have loved it, I'm sure, as a kid, too. So, yeah, I'm really struggling because, like, the reasons for it being offensive is, the language, which I saw nothing of, and then, obviously, there's, like, some people who panic because there's underwear and, like, partial nudity, and I'm like, I don't really think that, like, anyone's paying any attention to that. I don't think the audience is thinking about it as, like, I mean, I guess the concept of underpants is hilarious when you're, 6. And I think there's at one point someone poops Well, they don't poop, but there's like a poop joke, and I guess that could offend people, even though like that is what 6-year-olds find funny. So, but one of the things I did see is that there was a concern that it was excessively violent. So what they did with the book is they actually included a chapter called, in the first one, the incredibly graphic violence chapter. And there's a warning, and it says, warning, the following chapter contains graphic scenes showing two boys beating the tar out of a couple of robots. If you have high blood pressure or if you faint at the sight of motor oil, we strongly urge you to take better care of yourself and stop being such a baby. Which I think is probably the best way anyone has handled, book challenges, because it's ridiculous. And to share with you, I did get an image of this graphic violence, and as you can see, it is absolutely horrifying and terrifying, and no child should be exposed to such horrendous things. And I'm being facetious, obviously. So yeah, I don't have a lot to say. It was a fun book. It was a great book. I think it really is appealing to its target audience, and I think it would encourage reading from, kids who may be more reluctant readers. And I say, if you're challenging it, no. Just no. Please stop. So, anyway, I'm probably going to, at some point, maybe I'll even check out more of these Captain Underpants books, because they were pretty funny. Okay, bye.